All right, good afternoon, everyone. I'm so glad to see so many people here. I'm Kristen Vanderveen, and I am the immediate past president of NEACT and the organizer of the summer 2023 PD series. And this is the final event of the summer PD series for 2023. And we're really pleased to have Scott Nickles from Mass Insight here with us to talk about strategies for keeping our AP chemistry students on track. So Scott, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Awesome. Hello, everyone. As Kristen said, my name is Scott Nickles. You can feel free to call me Scotty if you want. Everyone does. I'm here to introduce to you the AP On Track framework. So Mass Insight, just very briefly, is a nonprofit in Massachusetts that supports AP students' success across Massachusetts and a couple of schools in Rhode Island as well. So we've been around for 25 years or so. And we are in 90 schools across Massachusetts presently. So this is the On Track framework. This is a product I got to work on with Mass Insight and with the schools that we're involved with. When I say product, it is entirely free. So don't think I'm trying to sell you anything. This is free. It's on the internet. It's all out there for you to see. Okay, so just to give you a brief background about how this works and how this came about. I'm going to talk about the origins of the On Track framework so you can see where we got these ideas from. And then we're going to do an overview of the framework, and then we're going to dive into it. I'm going to show you a sample lesson that I've created, and then hopefully, given enough time, we'll put together a sample lesson together from the things that you have on your mind, right? So those are the four things that are happening there. So we started with this thing called the AP Action Community. It was a grant-funded program where we got together and asked ourselves some questions. We asked, how can we help improve students' AP success across the board, and particularly students of Black and Latino or low-income students. So we had 6 participating high schools, 4 in Massachusetts, 2 in Connecticut, and we wanted to address the disproportionality of students from the demographics of their school to the demographics of their AP classes. So we would see a high percentage of white students in a school that had high percentages of Black or Latino students, and we were wondering why and how we could fix these things. And overall, our goal was to increase participation and success for these students. So we are supporting historically underserved or historically underrepresented students enroll in AP, persist, and then succeed on the exam. So there's a 3-step process that goes through kids doing well in AP. With the school teams that we partnered with, we also partnered with Johns Hopkins Everyone Graduates Center, and then the MI's AP team, which is myself and 7 other people in general who work as AP content specialists and content directors within AP. Collectively, there's some ridiculous number of high school years of teaching experience amongst the crowd of us. So this is designed by educators. We understand, we've been in the classroom. We wanted to do things that educators would want or need to do in their class. So we have seen it. We have the experience to put it into play. And we had this, we were lucky enough to have this opportunity to do this. So we're going to talk about the On Track framework, right? So we had this motivation, or we had this idea of what was happening in the classroom, and we said, we had to shift the way teachers were thinking about their students, right? Our students are not motivated. Our students don't complete assignments. These are classic things that we always hear, right? I've said them myself. Oh, my student's this, my student's that. And really, we wanted to shift away from that thinking and think about what experiences were we providing to students so that we could support their persistence and success, whether that mindset shifted, away from thinking about what your students were not doing to shifting to what your students were doing and what those things were that allowed them to do better, to think better about themselves and their work and their success. So we want to shift that thinking away from what they're not doing and talk about things that they can do and that we can do to help them. So we focused on and we found sort of 4 areas of time where students could be lost out of the class, whether they were going to drop the class, whether they were just giving up on the class or something like that. We identified these 4 major time frames, right? So the strong start starts around right at the beginning of the year, August, September, right? And the keeping up section is right when grades start to fall. First semester, students get their grades back. They're really down in the dumps about it. They drop the class, whatever. Midterm reset, this is after the holiday break. The students are coming back. You have to get them back in the groove of being in a rigorous AP course, get them back into the material. And then finally, exam prep. Exam prep is that anxiety-ridden time for students where they are feeling the pressure of the test, feeling as if they don't understand certain things, and they really want to get this test over with, and they want to do well. And so these are the 4 times during the academic year that we identified as places to focus on student success. We then identified 5 domains of experiences for students, right? So we have the mindsets, the student agency and voice, classroom culture, AP skill building, and then feedback and grading. And you'll notice that even in an AP course, AP skill building is only one of those things, right? Mindsets are how students are feeling about themselves, how they're feeling about the class, how they're feeling about their peers, how they're feeling about the teacher, how they are building their own success. Student voice and agency is allowing students to have some voice in what they're doing, how they're learning, right? We're all very experienced teachers. We know what we teach, we know it works well, but we also know that there are some certain students out there that we're not reaching for some reason. So let's see what student voice can do for them. Let's see what they think they need and how we can help them. Classroom community and culture. We want students to feel like they belong in an AP class. We want them to know that they can succeed, know that we're there to support them. AP skill building, we all know about the CED skills, and we all know about those skill sets that are in there, and we want to help build those skills because those skills help them succeed on the exam. And then feedback and grading. Students often don't understand feedback. They just see a grade and they're either overjoyed or depressed, and they can't take that feedback and then roll it into their own learning. So we wanted to focus on these 5 domains and give educational experiences that were related to these 5 domains that fell into these 4 time frames. So we're here. I'm talking very quickly because I want to get through sort of the background of this and get into the lesson and the lesson building. Does anybody have any questions up until this point? I have chat open. If you have a question, you want to just speak out loud, that is also fine. But does anybody have any questions about where we are at this point? I realize I've gone through my slides in 9 minutes. I've got lots and lots to talk about, so. Practicing my 7-second wait time. Okay. So for anybody who is here who is not an AP teacher or teaches classes outside of AP, these can also be applied to other classes. Don't think that they are AP specific. They are focused on the AP program so that the AP program, we're building around that because that's where our statistics are coming from. Carrie, I saw you come off mute. Do you have a question?
No, I'm fine.
Okay.
I'm fine.
Okay, so I've said this word experiences over and over again, so I want to give you guys a chance to look at them so you can see what I'm talking about. So that QR code will take you to our on-track framework. That will give you an idea of some of the things that we're talking about with the on-track framework, right? So we have mindsets and we have experiences within those mindsets about how we can help students build the right mindset for AP or for other rigorous classwork, right? We have student voice and agency, and we've got experiences within that as well. So this website, again, it's free. You don't have to be a member of Mass Insight's program to access it. There's no password, anything like that. So do feel free to check out that website. And I will talk a little bit more about how you can build these into lessons, oh, my words are escaping me, deliberately. You want to deliberately build them into things. Now, to be fair, you already do a lot of these things already. So don't think that we've reinvented the wheel and come up with some miraculous solution. You guys already do a lot of these things in your classroom, but now we're going to do them with intent. We're going to focus on this lesson, and we're going to take a lesson and make sure we are giving students voice and agency, make sure that we're having feedback and grading so that they can incorporate that feedback into their work and improve. So that's what we want to see when we look at something like a lesson plan. We want to see it from a perspective of where is it falling in our time frame, and then what experiences can we build into that lesson that help students without taking away from the curriculum of AP, because we know the AP curriculum is vast, right? You have 9 months, less than 9 months to fit all of it in, and you don't want to take away from that curriculum by doing any sort of weird things. But these aren't taking away any curriculum. They're just sort of framing the way that you're building a lesson. So I have a couple of lessons queued up. So the AP equity tools is what they're called. We're going to identify concrete ways of supporting AP students at specific times of year, right? So I'm going to take an example lesson plan, a sample lesson plan, which I've done for something at the beginning of the year. I've also done one for the later part of the year as well. We're going to take a look at that, allow the students to, well, we'll get to that when we actually get to the lesson. Reflect on the successful lesson and identify critical elements. So if you have a lesson that you find successful, we can talk about that a little later in ways we can sort of build in parts of the framework, and then modify a successful lesson to intentionally incorporate elements of the framework into the students' experiences. All right, so I'm going to focus on these two areas, strong start and keeping up, right? Strong start is the area where we're onboarding students, we're orienting them and giving them a way to feel connected to the classroom. We are empowering them to tackle the challenge of AP. A lot of kids come into AP and it's their first, well, in chemistry, it's not usually their first one, but they're coming into chemistry, and chemistry itself can be daunting. We want to build a strong foundation, allow them to gain confidence so that they're not falling out of the curriculum, they're not falling out of the roster, you're not seeing your numbers dwindle over the course of the year. And then nurturing a sense of belonging in which students can fall back when things get difficult, right? We want students to feel as if there's a community that they have in the classroom, that they can seek out not only you, but each other for emotional support, academic help, whatever it might be, so that they can succeed in the classroom. And then we'll talk about keeping up as well. This is where, as you sort of progress through the AP curriculum, things get a little bit harder. We want to make sure the kids understand that they have supports from the adults, they have support from their peers. We're going to nurture a growth mindset. You've heard that term before, I'm sure, growth mindset. We want them to know that they can grow within the AP curriculum and within their class. We want them to be able to see that they're succeeding. We want to provide tools so that student can develop their own agency. So if a student is in need of extra help, it doesn't have to fall on you and that hour of time you have after school. With that student showing up every day, we can build that student's independence and allow that student to do some self-learning. And then as the holiday breaks draw closer, you're getting onto grades of the first quarter, students will benefit from extra support, right? You want them to be independent learners, so as they go into a big break, like, you know, Thanksgiving is a good tester because it's a 3-day break-ish, and then going into the holiday break after that, having some independence and the ability to learn will get them through that break a little bit easier. So here's a sample lesson plan, not here. I'm going to give you a link right in chat. 1 second. Here is a sample lesson plan. Ooh. It is in Google. I believe it'll allow you to view it. I am going to pull it up on my screen, I think. That's the other one. Yes, I am. This one. All right. I have many screens open, and sometimes that's a problem. Here we are. So I am going to do a new share to this one. This one right here. All right. So this is just a very simple lab that I've taken, very simple procedural wise, very simple in terms of what they're looking for. So this is a dilution experiment. So this is, you take a red food dye, you make a solution, you compare it to a commercial product with red dye in it to determine the concentration of a red dye. You've seen this kind of lab before. It's nothing new in terms of the lab experience. All of these on-track framework documents will have the same thing right at the beginning. They'll have a discussion of the on-track framework. They'll talk about the key components here, and then they'll drop into the lab itself, right? So here are the materials. Just going to zoom this in a little bit. If my, boop, boop, there we go. I can make it even bigger. So we're looking at food dye. Any color of food dye will do, doesn't matter. You want to get a beverage that's the same color. So, you know, if you got red Gatorade works, red Powerade works. If you can get red food dye 40 and then find something with red food dye 40 in it, that works great. Those Kool-Aid sort of squeeze bottles that are very thin plastic, they work great too. They're also super cheap because Kool-Aid is just sugar water and dye. So you want to create a 1 molar, and that's in quotes because it's 1 molar for your purposes. We're not actually measuring any molarity here. This is just to get them to the idea that you can figure out a concentration based on a color scheme, right? So I create mine by using 10 drops of food dye to 500 milliliters of water. It creates a 1 molar solution, 1 molar solution. Graduate cylinders, beakers, you know, all those things, handy for them to make dilutions because that's the process they're going to go through. And then if you have a spectrophotometer, great. If you don't have a spectrophotometer, great. You don't need one for this lab to be successful. They can use the look down method. We'll talk about that in a minute if you don't know what that is. So just an overview really quickly, students are going to be creating a serial dilution from a 1 molar solution so that they can then compare the commercial dye product to that to determine what the molarity of that commercial product is, right? So you're going to describe that product to the student. Now you could do this as an introductory lab where you describe how to do a serial dilution, or you could do this sort of at the end of the unit when they've already done this kind of thing before and let them go. My preference would be that, just because there's a little bit more agency in here for students to do that sort of thing, right? So we're going to describe the problems to the students, and that's what this lesson is based on. It's lesson sort of based on they've seen this kind of thing before. Maybe you do the % copper in brass, where you determine how much copper is in a brass tack or a brass nail or something like that. Or you've done some other concentration related experiment. So they know how to make a dilution in general. So they're going to have to identify the concentration of an unknown, right? You're giving them that experiment. How they do that is entirely up to them. You're going to give them the equipment, present it to them. This is your equipment. You can use any of these things, all of that. You're going to give them a known solution, the 1 molar solution, and then have them design a procedure. But they're not going to do the procedure until they have the opportunity to get and give feedback. Students are going to share those procedures with other groups and share them with you as well. Your job is to allow them to give feedback. If there's any glaring problems, you know, don't hesitate to jump in, but allow your students to give and receive feedback on their procedure. And then step 3 is incorporating that feedback, right? They want to bring that feedback that they got from other groups, other peer groups, and put that into their procedure. Maybe they didn't use the right measuring tool. Maybe they all focused on using beakers instead of graduated cylinders. And one group is like, oh, well, graduated cylinders are going to be more accurate when creating your dilution, so you should use graduated cylinders. They get to take that feedback and they get to bring it back to their group and they get to revise their procedure. That's a really important part so that students actually get to receive feedback and then use that feedback. Once they've created the standard set, they identify the concentration. I have found that the concentration of any solution is often has to be diluted down. So Gatorade, I usually cut it down by a fourth, I think, before it actually fits into that curve that they're creating. But that's another thing you can discuss with them as they're going through the procedure. And then at the end, you give the students a fictional procedure or two, and have them identify problems and solutions to that procedure. This way they can look at that, see how that might impact their results, and then you can either do it mathematically, you can do it descriptively, however you want to handle that. Give the students the opportunity to adjust the procedure as written and explain why it's affecting the results in the way it is and how their fix will then adjust for that, right? So this is a very informal lab. We're not doing, tons of lab procedure or tons of lab questions with it. We're not doing a ton of follow-up questions with it. But this making it sort of an informal process. We're not looking at a grade. So this is a low stakes activity, right? Students are gonna have they're going to be less stressed about the grade that they're going to get based on the mistakes that they're making in the class. So they can make mistakes, they can get feedback and adjust to those mistakes. So they can see how that feedback is going to give them a learning opportunity. Students are given the choice at how to create the procedure that they're doing. They don't have to go off a pre-written procedure. They have to take what they know, put that together for themselves, right? Once they're comfortable, they can share it with other groups, receive feedback. Classroom community, this is group work. So students are free to be active participants, active listeners. Maybe they want to write down the procedure while everybody else is explaining it. However they want to participate, allow them to do that. Allow them to be a part of that community, a part of that culture that you're building in your classroom, right? And then an open whole class discussion provides a setting where students can get comfortable with each other. This is why this is a good beginning of the year process. It gives students the ability to talk to each other, learn about each other, learn about why they do certain things or how they understood certain things. Then with their skills, they can make connections between procedures, errors, and results, teaching them to connect those results to procedures, right? A skill that will be expected of them on the exam, for example. They can also learn how to apply fundamental math skills to chemical processes as explanations. So we're building in that AP skill for them to work through while they're working on this lab. And again, no formal grading, but there is informal feedback. Feedback can either be written, so you can hand out procedures amongst the class. The class can write or make notes on someone's procedure and then hand it back to the group so they can either see it that way, or you can do informal verbal feedback. So the students groups can get together as a group and trade off and talk about each other's procedures, talk about what works, what doesn't work, what they see as a problem, what they see as a benefit, something good that they see as well. And that's lesson number 1. Anybody have any questions, thoughts, comments? Again, I have the chat open. If you just want to talk, I'm here for that too.
Everything's great so far.
Great, I'm glad.
At my school, we're starting the process of integrating universal design for learning, and I see a lot of overlap between that approach to planning lessons and your different components of what you're doing here.
Yeah, the group of people that we got together, we had Brockton High School, we had there was a high school in Boston, there was one in Worcester, and one in sort of northern Massachusetts, I can't remember the name of, and then the 2 in Connecticut. So we had sort of this broad range of teachers and teaching experiences. And we really got to sit down and talk about the nitty-gritty of what they're seeing in their AP students and build ideas around that. So those people as well have been trained. I was trained in UDL ages and ages ago. So you're seeing ideas that already exist sort of put forth in an intentional way to help students build confidence, community, and increase success and participation. Feel good I've slowed down a bit. I know because I'm breathing. Okay. So I'm going to switch back to my PowerPoint real quick. So that might, we can go to that. All right. So this is the first one, right? You create a procedure to determine the concentration of an unknown. You're going to evaluate other group procedures. Then you're going to learn to provide useful feedback and identify how procedural errors will affect results. That's this lesson in a nutshell. The second one I want to present to you is just AP FRQ practice, right? So we have FRQs, students need to practice them. In this case, students will pair with another student to deconstruct an FRQ, annotate, discuss verbally, pre-write, all of those words you hear in AP Lang and AP Lit, right? We're going to apply them here, right? We're going to give them the opportunity to look at an FRQ free from the constraints of the 22 minutes that they have to answer one or the 10 minutes they have to answer a short one, and give them the opportunity to talk about it, see what they see, etc. Then going to evaluate other student responses. So that pre-write, you can either have them evaluate the students in their classroom, or you can garner pre-written student answers from College Board as provided for them to evaluate those answers as well. And then reflect on that feedback, right? How can the student improve their responses? And then rewrite the response if needed. That's, again, in a nutshell, what the second lesson is looking like, right? So before we get on to this part, I'm just going to pull up that second lesson so you all can see it. As soon as I remember where I put it, there it is. I'm going to give you the link in chat. This one, again, focuses on the sort of keeping up zone, that November to December area where grades are coming out and students are, okay, that is not what I wanted. And you know that's not what I wanted, silly computer. Students are starting to sort of slog through the material, getting a little tired. All right, let me share. That one. Okay, again, same basic structure. If I'll give you a link to some other ones at the end. I think I have a link to others, but we have them for biology, chemistry, AP Lang, AP Literature, statistics, calculus. We have them for a bunch of different subjects in the STEM fields. So feel free to share them with your colleagues, or if you teach another class and you're interested in them for another class, feel free to share them. So again, this one has that same information on the on-track framework, only now it talks about keeping up. All the definitions are the same right here. Now we look at the lesson itself, right? So any FRQ relative to your current unit works. Student responses, if you can find them. If not, you can use the responses that they write in class. And then the one thing we've added to this is we're going to add a note card. And on that note card, you have 3 questions for the students. Are they struggling, surviving, or thriving? Anything that the teacher, you, can do to help, and what do they think might help them improve their FRQs? So you're going to give them some voice and give them some agency here to tell you how they're doing, right? This comes a lot during the end of first semester, right? November, whatever, 19th is a critical day for students because it's the end of first quarter and they don't know what their grade's going to be and they're panicking. And if they don't get an absolute A, they're going to, you know, their parents are not going to love them anymore, or their grandmother's going to move to Moldova. I don't know what's going to happen, but something is going to happen to these poor children if they don't get the best grade ever. So we want to know where they are from an anxiety level. And this is going to roll into that while still providing them with effective practice FRQ work, right? So you hand out the FRQs, give students time to practice them. Students should not put their names on them at this point, right? They should be anonymous. Right? If you have a class of, 5 students, it's going to be a little less anonymous because everybody sort of recognizes handwriting, but there are ways to work around that, right? Hand out either pre-printed responses or take the student responses and then sort of shuffle them among the classroom. This then allows students to read through responses and make notes about the responses. Make notes of where something isn't clear, where the answer seems correct, where the answer seems incorrect, where they have a similar thought is also another place where students can make a notation. They think, I thought this as well. That's great, because that helps build community among students. Whether that's right or wrong doesn't really matter. But they can see if they both thought it and it was right, okay, great. There's, how did we learn that? What did we do? If they both thought it and it was wrong, they can go back to that and find out, how did we learn that? Why do we think that? And then we can correct those misconceptions, right? We then return those FRQs to the original students for rewriting and corrections. So the student allows to, again, taking in feedback and allowing that feedback to push forward their own learning. And then optionally, you can give the students the rubric to review, right? If you want to, you can do that. If you don't want to, feel free to just talk about what the correct answers are, but give the students some feedback as to how they did on the question itself, right? Giving them the rubric is just a way for them to see what a rubric looks like, understand kind of what we're looking for on the exams as they're graded. And then in the last 10 minutes of class, give the students those note cards and let them fill them out, right? It doesn't take much. All they have to do is circle one thing, struggling, surviving, or thriving on the top. That gives you an overall gauge of how the students are feeling. And usually it will reflect how they're feeling about that one piece right there, but it will also then roll into other feelings that the students are having from wherever they are, right? So if a student comes into the class and they feel like they're struggling, then they answer that question and they think they did really well, they might circle surviving. Student comes into the class and they feel like they're thriving, then they get to this question and it hits them like a truck, they might feel like they're struggling. So it's a good time to talk about that. And it's a good time to talk about that as a class, because once students understand that other members of their class are feeling the same way, they don't feel so alone. They feel like they're in a community where, okay, I feel like I'm struggling. These kids over here also feel like they're struggling. Wait, that kid, he's super smart. Why does he feel like he's only surviving? I don't understand. That gives them a perspective where, okay, I'm in a space where my teacher is here to support me. Okay, it's us against the test. It's not me against you. I'm here to be supported by my teacher. My teacher is here to help. Giving you that opportunity to tap into that and allow students, to build that mindset of I'm not alone. I'm here. I'm encouraged by the discussion. I realize this is a sort of stressful environment, but I can talk about that stress with my peers. I can talk about it with my teacher. I can talk about it with whoever I need to talk about it with, right? They understand that they can feel less alone, right? They can be shown that you're willing to help them through this struggle, because we all know it's hard, right? Student voice and agency, they can use this experience to gain skills in independent learning. This really will allow the students to start talking to each other, right? When they get a homework problem and they're having trouble, they already had this conversation with Joe from their, second period class. Maybe we can talk about this question. Maybe Joe understands this better than I do, or vice versa. Oh, I really understand this. Maybe if I talk to this person because I saw that they were struggling, I can help them with that. So give them that opportunity to use their voice with each other. Students get to know each other. They get to know, others' opinions and how they translated the question in the FRQ. Some kids look at a question, and we've seen it before. They answer another question entirely. We don't know how, but whatever they read translates in their brain to something else entirely. Let the students talk about that. They get to see that, oh, I thought the question was asking me about concentration, when the other student said, no, I thought the question was asking me about a dilution, which is relatively the same thing, but I'm making it up off the top of my head here. Students will be able to interact with the AP exam format a little more successfully when given the opportunity to practice AP FRQs. We know that. We've seen that, if they see stuff up front, they're more likely to do better on something later on.
Scotty,
Yes.
excuse me, I'm not familiar with this terminology. What's the FRQ?
Free response question. I apologize.
Oh, free response questions. Okay, I was trying to guess.
Yeah, no problem. No need to guess. So they'll see the FRQs. They'll have seen an FRQ before, and it'll be less of a shock to them, right?
Yeah.
Students will receive informal feedback on FRQ responses. Again, it may or may not be graded. You can decide how you want to handle that in your classroom, but it's a low stakes thing where they get the opportunity to regrade things. This is one of the things I heard. I was at the conference this past early August, and one of the things we talked about when we sat in with Dr. Isaacs, he gives group quizzes. He gives the quiz once, the students all take it individually, and then they take the quiz as a group. And they have to argue for their answers with each other. They get to talk to each other about how their answers are correct or incorrect or whatever. And he told this sort of anecdotal story about how a student on their individual quiz got the correct answer. But then when they went into the group, they didn't push their ideas, they didn't push their opinion enough. So they got the answer wrong on the group quiz. So it was an exercise in allowing students to talk to each other and make sure they could communicate their ideas to each other so that they could succeed together or fail together in that case where they weren't able to put their ideas together. So I think it's really interesting to get students to talk to each other about what they're doing. Any questions about this particular lesson? How I built it? Anything like that?
I just like how flexible it is because I can use it with any free response question throughout the
Absolutely.
year. You know, once they've seen free response questions and have an idea how to handle it, you can just literally teach them to get better at them.
Mm-hmm. And you can drop this in anytime. I mean, I will give you the template. Where did I get the template? I'm prepared for that question. Here is the template. I was going to give it to you in a skosh later, but you can have it now. It is basically the stuff we have at the top, which explains all the definitions and things, and then there's blank spaces for you to fill things in. Let me go ahead and pull that up. This one might be a little bit weirder for me to pull up, but I think I can. Here we go. Share. So this is the template. Like I said, the definitions are still at the top. Mindsets, all that stuff. The feedback and grading picture seems to be missing. I'll have to fix that. And then this is what you do. You think about a lesson that has been particularly successful. And then we do something with it. Does anybody have a lesson that you feel is particularly successful that you'd like to try and apply something to? I'll let you guys think about that for a second. I'm just going to go sort of over back to my PowerPoint for a moment. So we have the five components, right? 5 domains, we call them. Each one of these things is one of those 5 domains. Some of them are very obvious, some of them are less obvious. So let's see if we can identify in this first procedure, in the first lesson I showed you. Students know beforehand that they will be creating a procedure at the end of the unit. Ensure students have the necessary tools to succeed. What do you think that falls under? Which of those 5 domains do you think that might fall under? And feel free to put that in chat or say it out loud, whichever you prefer. So you have student voice and agency, classroom culture, mindset, AP skill building, and feedback and grading. Let's do the second one. Second one's a little easier. Students have full autonomy in creation of their procedure, and the only resource they can use is each other. No instruction on how to create the procedure. Which one does that fall under?
A skill building?
Skill building, it could be under skill building, absolutely. Anybody else? Agency, yep, absolutely, because they have the opportunity to choose however they want to build that procedure. Now, we know that there is a correct way to build the procedure in general, but these procedures in such a low stakes environment can be very flexible. So they can choose to use, graduated cylinders, or maybe they're going to use burettes to do their dilutions. Maybe they want to get really, really specific. So there's some autonomy there. So there's agency and there's also skill building, right? And that third one, students are given a choice. That choice right there, that says it's student agency as well. In that demonstrating their learning, they also get to take some feedback, right? They rely on teamwork and group learning. Effective group work can be taught at the beginning of the year. That's what this lesson is also a part of, right? They get taught how to do group work. Some students just like to fall back on, I'm going to do this all myself and I'm not going to rely on the group. And they need to understand how to do group work, right? So what do you think that one falls under? Relying on teamwork and group learning.
Mindset.
Mindset's a good one, yeah. What do you think that mindset might be? What mindset are we trying to build in students by giving them group work?
Teamwork, collaboration.
Yeah, those are really good ones, right? So we then look at students differentiating with each other, taking on roles that match their preferred style. There's agency there. Creativity and imagination is tapped. You can do this with students who like to write out, or maybe they like to be more artistic when they're discussing and building their procedure. And then students receive actionable feedback and grading. There's also community culture in those previous ones as well. When you rely on teamwork, you're building community culture. And then there's a key thing here. You have to teach students explicitly how to provide and incorporate feedback, right? That's something that I think I honestly, as a teacher, struggled with a lot. When I would give students feedback, I'd want to just tell them what they did wrong. And that's really not, I mean, it gives them the opportunity to go back and see what they did wrong, but it doesn't really give them feedback that they can incorporate. So you really want to take them how to provide feedback properly and then how to incorporate that feedback properly. Discuss and model the value of mistakes, right? Mistakes are part of the learning process. And if students never make a mistake, what are they learning anyway? Why are they in your class? Right? So mistakes are important. Obviously not mistakes when they're handling 12 molar hydrochloric acid. No mistakes there, right? But there are mistakes that they can make that then they can incorporate back into their process. And then have them reflect on that progress, right? How many revisions did they have to make to their procedure? How many changes, did they get the use of equipment right? Student mistakes are your job security. Absolutely, sure. But you want them to learn from those mistakes too, right? So keep in mind that they want to reflect on that progress as well, right? Maybe they do this procedure and then later on they do another procedure. You give them another opportunity to make a procedure and they have less revisions to make so they can see progress in that. And that's actually another one of the skills that we talk about in the on-track framework. In that second lesson, same kind of deal, right? Students annotating, circling tables and figures, right? That's a skill. We want them to be able to read a question, and we want them to get to the heart of that question, making diagrams to summarize a concept, verbally discussing information. Okay, that's a community culture thing right there. Pre-writing answers, student voice because they're writing whatever they want. It's also feedback and grading because they're going to be writing something that's going to get fed back to them. Examining pre-written or peer-written answers allows them to compare what they're seeing. When they see things that are similar, it helps build the mindset of, oh, I seem to understand what I'm doing, and then reflecting on how to improve their responses, right? Taking that feedback from either the peers or from you and incorporating that back into their own work. Provide specific support to students struggling to express themselves. So giving them additional visual aids and annotation. Teach them how to annotate a question. Teach them what the breakdown of the question is, right? What this question is looking for when they see the word identify or calculate or explain. Give them sentence starters like based on the data, right? That was something that came up in this year's chief reader feedback, I believe, that students didn't say things like based on the data. So it wasn't clear what they were talking about when they were talking about answers in their responses. Have students record themselves speaking on their phone and then use their recordings to transcribe and write out their response. Sometimes students find it very easy to talk about something, but very, very difficult to write. Give them the opportunity to talk through their answer. Their phones are excessively good tools. Now, I don't necessarily mean this in your classroom, so you have, 15 out of your 17 students talking into their phones and trying to give an answer, but, when they take home their responses at night, maybe you give them the opportunity to do that so they can transcribe. Give them ideas, help them build their own agency. Teach them about the importance of teamwork, celebrating the whole class's progress, right? We want everybody to be lifted up at the same time. Again, it's us against the test. We're not the enemy of the students. We are there to help guide them to their best result. And then have students keep track of their own scores and reflect on their own growth and their own progress. Let them see that they're doing better. Let them see that they've done worse, but then talk to them about, what that is and how they can rebound from that. Okay, so be intentional in incorporating these elements. And then be clear about why we're incorporating them. That's the point of this whole process, right? Again, this is a bunch of stuff that you guys already know. I'm not giving you, again, the key to future success in all things. I'm giving you tools that you've heard of, that you may have used in the past, and we're putting them together in an intentional and direct way. So let's take a look at that template one more time. Does anyone have something, a lesson that you think went particularly well that you'd like to share? And then we can incorporate some of the on-track framework into that lesson for you. It's okay. I've got lots of time.
Well, I'll share intermolecular forces.
Yeah, that's a tough one.
So
What did you
I'd tell them to go put molecules together, and they would struggle with that. They wouldn't really get the concept. So instead, I already pre-built a bunch of standard molecules, aldehydes, alcohols, carboxylic acids, and I put all these pre-built molecules in a box, and then I gave each table a box, and their job was to sort them out by category.
Mm-hmm.
And I found that much more efficient because they couldn't generate the structure, but they could recognize the structure.
Yeah. So that's a really great way to get them sort of on the front side of that, right? Instead of coming from the back end of that. So one of the things I can immediately see there is how to incorporate feedback, right? Taking that lesson, having the students sort of put them in categories, and then having their peers just walk around the room and say, oh, why is this in this order? Ours is in a different order.
Oh, that's great.
Right? They get to look at other people's work and see what they're doing, and then they can talk to those people. They don't have, don't help them along with that. Have them pick out those answers themselves and pick out those responses, and then say, okay, well, Sally, why did you put them in this order when, that group over there put them in that order? Who's right? And then you let the students talk about it, right? Give them their own voice to talk about it. And again, there's the feedback and grading process right there. There's community, because the students get to have a conversation about what they understand about what you've put in front of them.
Yeah,
And
self-evaluation.
Absolutely. Yep. And that's just a small thing, right? That wouldn't take an incredibly long amount of time to do.
That's right.
Does anyone else have a lesson that they really like, you think that goes well, and would like to incorporate some of the framework? Well, my information is going to come up at the end of this PowerPoint. This lesson framework here is yours. Take it away. It's free to use. It's not, like I said, it's part of the process of getting the framework out there. There's a second part of that about thinking about the challenges that teachers face, and the challenges that may prevent you from incorporating these critical elements into your instructional strategies, and what support you would need to address those strategies. Our on-track framework actually also covers administrators and people who are trying to help you help students. So keep that in mind as well. So for example, here, flexible grading and feedback, provide PD on grading rubric development, right? Grading rubrics, if you've never gone to the AP read, grading rubrics can sometimes be a very daunting task. If you go to the AP read, you know how to do it 3,000 times at a very fast pace, and you learn how to do that process. So having PD on that, using PD on technology for feedback, teacher scheduling to provide more prep time. Now, these are all things that probably beyond your control as a teacher, but administrators can sometimes be convinced to do something like this and help you out with that. I'm just going to switch back to my PowerPoint really quickly As soon as I find out where I put it, there it is. So again, this QR code is there that has lessons in other subjects, biology, environmental science, physics, AP Lang, AP Lit, statistics, calc, and potentially pre-calculus. I don't know if we've done that one yet. But we do focus on STEM and English, as that is our directive from the state. Again, this is the lesson component. The lesson template is there for you. If you want to share that with your coaches, evaluators, admins, feel free to share it with them as well. Also in the on-track framework, you will find concrete strategies for implementing these in your classroom, right? I showed you sort of the upper 2 levels. If you go down an additional level under each of those domains, you will find dozens of potential things that you can do that fit into that domain that link directly into that framework at different times. Let me go ahead and go to the on-track framework so you can see it. There it is, right there. I'm just going to move this over here. So, and that one. So this is the on-track framework. It's at equitytools.massinsight.org/on-track framework. You can get to it from, if you just go to Mass Insight's website. This is where it'll take you to when you go to the tool itself. There is a self-assessment if you want to pass it along to your admins. It's about equity, but the on-track framework is right here. And then the classroom strategies are down here, but you can link, these two are linked together. So if you go and explore the on-track framework and you're interested, you get to, you're coming back after the holidays, you want to look at what maybe can help in the midterm reset. You go into the midterm reset, it will take you to a bunch of the different domains about the midterm reset and how you can use those things. So let's say we want to celebrate the accomplishments from the first half of the course. We're going to click on that. It's going to take you in and give you some suggested strategies to use. So we're going to do an AP mid-year ceremony. Why not, right? We go in there to recognize and celebrate and give positive feedback to students about their efforts. It gets students back into the idea that, look, if this is what you did for this first half of the year, now you're back and you're ready. We've seen your success already. Let's celebrate that success and then dive right back in, right? So this allows you to, look at a student and give them some success. Thank you very much, Kristen. To give them some success to think about and see how they're doing, right? You can also go in and do, a self-assessment and a mindset check-in. See how the students are doing, right? Give the students time to reflect on their academic experience in an open, safe environment with a trusted adult to determine strengths and areas of opportunity for next steps. All of this is in there. Like I said, have at it, dive in. If you have questions, do feel free to contact me. I am available to chat about the framework anytime. There's my email address there. Equity Tools is there. Our regular website is there. Whoops, go back. But please feel free to reach out if you have questions. Because it's not only me. I'm just one person who is involved in the framework. We have many others. And we really love this product. So we're happy to talk about it with anyone. If you have questions, I am here for 5 more minutes. Wow. I thought I thought it was going to be done early. Well, thank goodness. Thank you, Sue.
Oh yeah, no, now I have so much to think about, and of course school starts tomorrow. Scott, I'm so glad you offered to give this presentation today. And I really appreciate it. I think we all have a lot to think about and a lot to explore. Something we could really, it could become a big project for
absolutely. And if you think of something partway through the year and you want some help, drop me an email. I'm happy we can connect on Zoom. We can chat on the phone. If you're in Massachusetts or Rhode Island, I'm happy to come to you and sit down in your classroom. I love talking about the on-track framework, so feel free to reach out to me.
And I'm just impressed that 18 chemistry teachers came today to come talk about this framework to help their students, and NEACT is really glad that Scott offered to do this. And Of course, I have to do my NEACT spiel. If you're not a member of NEACT, we really, really want to encourage you to join NEACT, because we offer chemistry-focused PD from lots of different perspectives. It's by chemistry teachers, for chemistry teachers, and your membership helps us to continue offering these kinds of events. So just keep that in mind.
The conference this summer inspired me to actually give this talk, because I was inspired by some of the speakers at the conference. So I do highly recommend you join the act.
Kristen, I have a quick question.
Sure.
Is this like anybody can access this website, or you need to be part of the
Nope.
Mass Insight?
Or NEACT
Oh,
or Mass Insight.
yeah, you don't have to be a member of the Mass Insight program.
Okay.
You can go to this website. It's free. It's open and available to anybody who wants to use it. It was grant funded, so it's not a product that we're hiding behind a paywall. It was, funded by the Gates Foundation, and so we wanted to produce a product for everybody to use.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Do you have any data about student success on the AP test using this format?
Well, this format has only been around for about 1.5 years.
Okay.
So its final form was created earlier in late last year, I think, in its final form. So we don't have data showing that this tool specifically helps students in the AP format, but we do have data showing that parts of this tool help students in AP success. And again, our directive is particularly to help students who are Black, Latin, or low income. And we see these sorts of things helping those students, but we know that they're helpful to all students as well.
I mean, do you have formative data, not just in terms of like scores, but of like social emotional
So that data
indicators?
right? So we are doing, we are in the process of doing some studies. So the full name of our company is Mass Insight Education and Research. So we're in the process of doing studies. We're working with the College Board to do a study on our Summer Bridge program, and we are collecting data over the course of the year that, that our on-track framework has been out and people who are using it, we're collecting data about that. So do we have the data right now? No. We haven't built a complete study that I'm aware of.
Mm-hmm.
So if you do, would you request, high schools to participate?
Mm-hmm.
Cool. Come in whenever it comes up.
Didn't you come to our APSI one year? I remember you.
Yeah, I was at the conference, and I went 3 summers in a row to the Mass Insight at Bridgewater because it was just so awesome. And I met Sue Biggs at that point, and it's been a great ride since,
Yeah,
So
Sue's
same
amazing.
thing with NEAC. NEAC got me into high school chemistry education, pulled me out of the college world, and went in there, and I was so nervous. And it was the greatest thing I ever done. The first thing I did was join them. And they're being so generous with their material and everything. It's being a blessing. Yeah. Yeah, I'm gonna check this out very well because I have a mixed classes this year for AP. First timers, kids who you never expected I would take it. And I'm like, oh, okay. So the cultural stuff, the diversity stuff comes into play. I said, do I address this the same way, or do I need to do something else not to kill the motivation? Because the fact that they signed up, it tells you they're motivated. So
Big step, yeah,
we'll
for
see
sure.
what happens. So yeah.
I can actually see this working at an honors level.
Yep, for sure.
Yeah.
More so like than introducing it just in AP, because you want them to have some self-confidence to want to motivate to go to AP.
Yeah.
Like you want to instill that curiosity and keep those skills building.
And once you have those skills built, even in an honors class, honestly, I could see this going all the way down into 7th and 8th grade as well.
Mhm.
Once you have those skills built and the kids understand that there's a culture of community in the classroom, it feeds right into your AP class. They come in understanding that these kids their peers are there to share that burden, and the culture just shifts.
Right, this has been a great session. I'm going to pause the recording here and thank you everyone for coming.